Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Holistic Authentication, Closing the Gaps in Your Passwordless Strategy, brought to you by Axiad. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jessica Pham, and I will be moderating today's discussion. For today's agenda, I will be kicking things off with some quick announcements and by introducing our speakers. From there, they will be guiding you through some very interesting trends that we're seeing in identity security, so you'll want to make sure you're ready to take some notes. And then we'll be hearing about the case for integrated authentication orchestration and closing out with how Axiad can help if your current solution is not currently integrated. So let's get started. Joining us today are two industry experts, Jerome Becquart, COO of Axiad, and Joe Garber, CMO of Axiad, each with over 20 years of experience in the security space. We will be hosting a live Q&A towards the end of today's webinar, so if you have any questions throughout the talk, please submit them through the questions icon to your right. We will do our best to answer every question, but if we aren't able to get to yours, we will reach out via email. Also, if you experience any technical difficulties throughout the webinar, you can click the support icon in the lower right corner of your screen, and the Bright Talk team will get you back on track. So without further ado, I will pass this off to Joe.
Great, thank you, Jess, and hello everyone. It's great to speak with you. As mentioned, the topic of today's discussion is passwordless authentication, and that's certainly a hot topic in boardrooms right now. But it's also a topic that carries a little confusion with it. Why is it important? What should you be looking for? And what's preventing organizations, perhaps like yours, from deploying a solution right now? So to kick us off and to level set, we pulled some recent market data to answer some of these questions at the outset of our talk, and I'll share those with you now. So first, what's behind this uptick in interest in passwordless authentication? And well, there are a couple of different reasons why. One is we're all under attack, and you see that represented in this data here, that 84% of organizations have experienced some kind of attack in the last 12 months. But I think just as important, it's not just any kind of attacks, it's attacks like phishing, and you see 2/3 of organizations have been impacted by a phishing attack in the last 2 years. And those are the kinds of attacks that can be prevented, if you will, with better authentication. So that's one reason why passwordless authentication is really a hot topic right now. And the second is, the traditional, passwords, if you will, or password-only approaches, maybe is a better way to describe it, that are more easily compromised, are beginning to fall out of favor. Why? One example is you see this report here that was just published in the last month or so that says that 24 billion combinations, not just one or the other, but combinations of passwords and usernames are available on the dark web right now. And that's just at this very moment. So that puts you in a position, if you're just using passwords, of being in a position where you can be highly compromised as an organization. But in addition to that, you see that almost 2/3 of US workers say, I don't really like passwords. They perceive them to be a problem, either from a security perspective or from a friction or a usability perspective. And they just really don't want to use passwords anymore, or have to use them in such frequency that it prevents them from doing their job. So what is coming? As a result of those two things, you see passwordless authentication is quickly rising in prominence. You see here that 2/3 of organizations are planning to implement a solution in the next 24 months, in part because of all the reasons that I just said. But at the same time, I think it's important, and Jerome will touch on this a little bit as he gets into his part of the presentation later on. It's critically important to note that not all passwordless solutions are the same. In this particular case, 61% of passwordless solutions, in fact, really aren't passwordless. They're storing some shared secret, or they have something behind the scenes that can be easily compromised, kind of under the covers, if you will. So my last data point then is this one, and I think this is perhaps the most important, and that is, so for a whole bunch of interesting and important reasons, you have passwordless authentication becoming much more prominent in the organization, but only a small percentage, about 50%, have actually deployed a solution today. And I would say a much smaller, perhaps a very fraction of that, is actually successful as a passwordless solution, authentication solution today. Why? In part is because of what I just said previously, that not all passwordless solutions are truly passwordless. But I think there's a bigger reason that organizations are holding back from deploying passwordless solutions, or that they're not getting the full value, and importantly, the full protection of their solution as well. So I'll touch on that next. So, as I mentioned, there are many reasons why organizations haven't deployed a passwordless solution, or that they aren't getting, again, their optimal value out of those solutions. I would say the primary reason is what you see pictured here, and that's enterprise complexity. And if you look at the center of this diagram, you start to see some of that different complexity that organizations, perhaps like you, are dealing with. You have different use cases. I'll go kind of clockwise around just the orange parts of the pie there. They have different use cases that you're dealing with within your organization. You might have different operating systems you're working with, Mac or Linux or Windows as examples. And so you've got different complexity just in and of itself. Then you have different other use cases that you might be dealing with. You have hybrid workforce that you're working with, or privileged users that you're trying to manage for. Those are different use cases. Then in addition to that, of course, you have different authentication methods that you might be using. I pictured just a few of them here, MFA tokens and PKI, but there's significantly more types of authentication methods that you might be managing already within your organization. On top of that, you have different types of identities that you're managing. The most obvious are users, or people, and machines. And then on top of that, you may, and many organizations already do, have IAM systems that they've already implemented, and they don't want to rip and replace them. And you see some examples of those types of solutions. I'm sure you're familiar with many others as well that also exist within the organization. So the point here is you have all of this complexity within the organization that organizations have to deal with when they're thinking about deploying a passwordless solution. But then surrounding that, around the perimeter, if you will, this particular diagram, there's other types of complexity that organizations are naturally dealing with as well. You have different types of users. You have on-premise, you have remote workers, you have offline workers, you have hybrid workers that all need different access to different things at different times. And of course, there are different mandates that you're dealing with. The White House, OMB, Office of Management and Budget, recently issued some very specific guidance requirements on how you should protect your organization. And that's having an impact and adding additional complexity to you as an organization. And then, of course, pictured on the bottom and on the perimeter there is bad actors are getting smarter. And there's multiple attack vectors that they're exploiting. And so you have that whole picture of complexity, internal complexity, external complexity, and then, like many organizations, you may be experiencing M&A, or will be soon, and that'll add even more complexity. So this becomes a barrier to success when you're thinking about passwordless authentication in many cases, and can cause some real significant challenges. So our perspective is this. So complexity can lead to fragmented solutions, and that complexity can cause real problems. So because you're dealing with silos, different operating systems, potentially different authentication methods, perhaps doing users versus machines in different ways, or trying to manage all these different ecosystems, that fragmentation creates a number of things that can be considered very negative to you from your cybersecurity posture perspective. And those can be inflexibility, that can include complexity from an administration perspective. It can create significant friction for your end users, which means that they might look for ways to circumvent your security. Part of the research that I didn't show, I think, said 60-some% of end users have looked for opportunities to circumvent security practices if they get too complex. So you have all of those things. And I think the most important here is when you deal with things in silos, you create these, as pictured here very simply, tunnels to your critical infrastructure, your people, your critical applications, the keys to your kingdom that allow bad actors to get access to that information just simply because you've created gaps and inconsistencies by taking a fragmented or siloed approach to authentication. So our perspective, again, is to look at things differently, to not look at individual slices of your authentication problem or be constrained by or concerned about, maybe is a better way to describe it, your enterprise complexity, but instead to look at things with fresh eyes and from a holistic perspective. And we call this integrated authentication orchestration. And what you see here is by taking a holistic approach, by looking at all of those things in one single lens, the different use cases, authentication methods, identity types, and IAM ecosystems, it allows you to do some really important things. And you see those kind of pictured across the bottom there. By looking at these problems holistically and addressing them holistically, it allows you to assimilate and cast a wide net across all of those different things and look at them from a normalized perspective. And importantly, this is complex. I know we've said that. Certainly, I don't need to explain that to you because you live that every day. But automation becomes so critical because it's so complex, and your organization probably has many different challenges associated with managing authentication. You need to automate many of those capabilities. And so that you can assimilate across everything. You automate some of the core capabilities associated with authentication. And then you can actually do the authentication in a systematic way, which is obviously very important to eliminate those gaps and inconsistencies that I just described. But it doesn't stop there. It allows you to then authorize and grant access to the information that is needed most by your end users or your machine identities if necessary. And importantly, when you're looking at things holistically and you have a single solution that allows you to address all of those challenges in one way, it allows you to adapt more efficiently to new variables, because we all know there are new variables, whether that's M&A or different attack vectors. Having the ability to adapt or become more resilient to new risks to your organization becomes really a critical piece. So in total, you see a picture of the bad actors kind of being blocked out. When you close down those gaps, it protects your critical infrastructure, the keys to your kingdom, and allows you to do all of those things in a much more systematic way.
To watch the full video, click the link below to our Bright Talk channel. For more Axiad content, click subscribe.